have you guys here. We're excited to be here again, SBC Online. We're trying to do this every Tuesday and Thursday. We're doing it with solutions. We're doing it with buildings. We're talking to everybody in the ecosystem, trying to bring that knowledge forward. And SBC Online is growing as well. So we're seeing the traction kind of pick up. More and more people are joining. We're getting new partners in, new buildings, and then all those people that work with us are being added to the ecosystem, which is really exciting. SBC Online is for you. You know, it's about taking SBC out of the center, out of the bottleneck, allowing everybody in the ecosystem to find each other, connect, collaborate, innovate. And so we're just really excited to be here with you today. We always start with founded in science, refined by practice, constantly optimized by our network of experts. And the smart building certification is just that, right? It's a rolling benchmark. It's always evolving. It's evolving based on the best we're seeing. So your solutions, your buildings, the work that you're doing is actually pushing that benchmark and pushing that certification. So today we're going to be talking to Tur from out of Denmark, from Ubiqisense. We're going to be talking about their solution certification. And we really, really like these talks because it kind of demystifies the solution a bit, right? You know, with marketing collateral and sales collateral, the actual technology or the actual value of that technology, it's so hard to communicate that to the market. So what we're really excited about with these solution certifications and these talks in particular is that it kind of, you know, in a way makes it palatable for everybody. It makes it easy to process. We look at it from different stakeholder perspectives, and we look at it from different functions within the building. So as you know, this is our SBC framework. Building usage is about how do you manage the usage of your asset. Building performance is about the sustainability and the energy and ESG. Building environment is about health and well-being. How do you make sure that the indoor environment is healthy? Safety and security is about digital, but also physical. And then user behavior and collaboration is really about how people interact with each other and interact with the building. So, you know, solutions are all of different shapes and sizes and work in different ways. Some of them do something very, very niche. Other solutions support the entire ecosystem. Ubiqisense as a solution is an occupancy sensor. It's a hardware-based technology. They have software, of course, that you can use in order to get the data out of it. But it helps in so many of these areas. So I'm really excited today to be talking to Tur because we're going to go one by one through each of these areas, and we're going to really just break down how Ubiqisense can help you in your building. The solution certification, what we have to say about all of our certifications is it's not just a stamp, right? The stamp is the beginning. Once we certify, we can help, right? Because once we certify a building or a solution, we know what's going on within that building in that solution. That allows us to help with matchmaking, help people find each other, help with innovation, help with understanding how to improve things. And with that additional knowledge, we can not only help solutions find buildings or buildings help find solutions, but we can help solutions find each other. And that's really important, right? I think with an occupancy sensor, there's a ton of integrations that are possible. You can integrate with HVAC systems and BMS systems and all these types of things. So how do we help Ubiqisense and other solutions that go through the solution certification find each other? And yeah, we're going to dive into it now. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Tur onto the stage. Let me close this out. Stop sharing. And here we are. Tur, are you there? Hey.
I'm here.
There he is. There he is. Nice to have you. Maybe we start with a little bit of introduction of yourself. And maybe if I haven't done the intro to Ubiqisense justice, you can introduce the company as well.
Certainly. So first of all, thank you for having me here, Nicholas. I'm really looking forward to this session. A little bit about me. I have a background in hospitality around revenue and property management. That was kind of my stepping stone into the digital world, where I started out as a founder developing exactly property and revenue management systems for hotels. That was basically all about understanding how to best utilize the space, when to sell it to customers, which customers to sell it for, what's the equilibrium between the occupancy and the revenue, and so on. So that was my first dive into this world of building, so to speak, and it has given me an immense sort of boost going into the whole PropTech and smart building thing. And I started with Ubiqisense around, when was it, 4 years ago, I believe. And back then we were in fact a very niche product, as you mentioned. We didn't consider very much the larger ecosystem at scale. We just saw an opportunity around this technology in order to really enable customers, specifically offices and educational institutions and so on, leveraging the energy to support only the amount of people present in whatever place they were present in. So this was our focus in the very beginning. We had one interface. We interfaced to BACnet, so we would connect directly to the BMS, and from there, obviously, the end user could control the heating and ventilation and all these systems, the lighting and so on. However, as we progressed, we understood that we were not just a niche, but we were part of a larger ecosystem at scale, and we were looking a lot around to see, like, where can we partner up with people, where can we bring the data that we collect to be used in an optimal way. This was before we knew about you guys. I don't think you existed back then, 4 years ago, maybe. So it was really looking for where do we fit in our solution. And we actually early on came to the conclusion that the systems out there that were present, they were not really complementary to what we were doing. So we were looking very much at energy saving and so on. But through our initial contact with the market and the first customers and so on, we understood that through an occupancy sensor like ours, the possibilities are numerous.
Yeah.
So we didn't pivot, but we included also the space optimization part of it as a natural next step in sort of operating buildings. I remember one of our first customers, educational institution in Denmark, said, the cheapest building to operate is the one that you don't need. So that really resonated with us, and we started looking into actually bringing intelligence around the occupancy levels and so on in buildings. And again, we were looking to see where can we deploy our data, and we couldn't really come across any system that fitted our needs. So out of necessity, we started building our own platform, which I'm happy to say is coming along quite well now. And I'm obviously biased, but to my best experience, is one of the best ones out there in regards to understanding the use of the building.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's this global consciousness of where we are with smart building, right? I think even last year, smart building was still being looked at as like, what is it, and is it interesting, and should we be doing it? And I think that everybody's coming around to know this is a requirement. It's needed. We have to have data, and we need to be measuring and managing space better. So yeah, we weren't around 4 years ago, and we saw that there was a need for this collective work together. So it's we're very grateful to have you guys part of the ecosystem and support you guys. But
yeah, absolutely.
You said something that you come from the hotel industry, right? So, okay, my first question is Ubiquisense in hotels yet?
We're not in hotels.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not in hotels. We had a few, I would say, requests from hotels, but it's a little bit more complicated than such with
Yeah.
hotels.
Well, hotels, you're getting into the residence, right? Where people sleep and these types of things and
That's
occupancy.
the thing exactly. Yeah.
But the reason it struck me was I grew up in the hotel business, right? Like my father was in the hotel business. So actually to be able to spar with you on hotels is really interesting because I just want to say, I think real estate in general can learn a lot from hotels, right? Because the way that a hotel is valued when it gets sold or when it gets, looked at for the future is on its revenue and on how it's being used, and therefore its occupancy and how often the asset is actually being utilized. So I thought it was a kind of nice bridge because I think that's exactly what we need to be doing with occupancy sensors in office spaces and in collective spaces and in areas is quantifying what that actual impact is.
I couldn't agree more, and I would say particularly probably within something like co-working spaces that we've seen specifically in the past 5 6 years really pop up and sort of disrupt the office landscape. I believe that there is really a lot of optimization regarding the business models from these offices that can learn from hotels.
Yeah.
It's a bit immature at the moment. I think that the mindset is not right quite there. But when we look at our data, and we have around 150 customers across 3 4 continents, we see like very very similar pictures across the board. And as a probably damaged by my hotel background, I think that okay, well, since these tables aren't utilized before 10 o'clock in the morning and everybody leaves around 4 o'clock, like, can you rent it out maybe half price before that, or have some after hours, way of optimizing your revenue? Can you rent out the same table twice? And all these things that we just know from the hotel background, but that can really, I think, be beneficial for co-working spaces.
Yeah, and we're in a very traditional industry where it's just coming around to this kind of disruption that's happening. So it is interesting, and I mean, WeWork was kind of the beginning of that co-working movement, right? And I mean, how old is WeWork? 4 or 5 years old? I don't even know.
Yes, something like this. Yeah.
We're just getting started, and I think it's really, really, really exciting. So let's dive into it. If we look at the SBC framework and we start with building usage, I think that's of course the core of what Ubiqisense is all about. But can you give me some view of how does occupancy sensors help in managing usage? And if you could speak to a real estate owner, a real estate developer who doesn't, was just born and doesn't know what this stuff can do for you, what would be your view on it?
Certainly. I mean, so again, as I said before, there are so many use cases for occupancy sensors that we also in our process had to limit ourselves, which is why we're more or
Yeah,
less focusing exclusively on universities and offices per se, because when you go into commercial real estate and malls or shopping centers or so on, you come across completely different use cases than, for instance, offices and educational institutions. So I'll try also here to limit myself to those two things.
yeah,
Um, so I think anybody who worked in a medium to large size company knows that there are never enough meeting rooms. And this is just, I mean, this is kind of the entry-based case where we always start. This is around the meeting rooms because it's such an obvious and easy case to actually work with. We see a lot of people who already maybe have some kind of peer sensors or presence sensors that they can detect whether, is the meeting room in use or not. But I would say that actually in certain cases, this kind of intelligence is even worse than not knowing, because you only get the data point from one metric, basically occupied or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't give you any actual intelligence if you're talking about meeting rooms for, let's say, 8, 10, 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't, I mean, what you need to know, you want to granulate that further down and say, well, okay, so is it in use, and then by how many? And this is just, we see it across pretty much every customer. They always are surprised about the actual insight that they get. So all of a sudden we go from a discussion about whether, should we try to move to something bigger? Should we look at converting office space into meeting rooms to ensure that we have enough, and so on? We're talking about really sort of expensive change level decisions that needs to be made, until all of a sudden we can say, well, actually just put a partition wall in here and there and get a few phone boxes and so on, and you're set and good to go. And it's such a revelation. So I would say that's a really, really sort of clear
Basic case study. And what's
basic.
interesting about it, right, is that what we're seeing is more and more companies are getting away from room booking, right? They're just saying occupied, not occupied.
Yep.
If not occupied, you can take it, right? And if you think about that value case, you see a big room that holds 8 people, and you have 7 people who want to meet, and there's one person in there. You say, hey, can you move over to that phone booth because I want to use this room with 8 people? And it's that kind of like practical discussion that can start to happen when you have this level of detail.
It is. It's a completely different level, and what we're really aiming to achieve is, I mean, I'm certain that most of the people listening here also are aware of the sort of occupancy monitoring that you traditionally take, hire students to come around, walk around the perimeters for, spend an hour in each place and see what are people doing and so on. It becomes very much very expensive. It's a tedious process and so on. But it does give a good level of understanding at a sort of snapshot level. What we're hoping to achieve going forward is to completely eliminate this kind of way of work, because with a vision-based sensor, with an artificial sort of level of intelligence in there, we can capture many of those benefits as well going forward, like looking at object detection, for instance, like beach toweling. Did people come and leave their jacket and their bag and then go to a meeting? That's something that
Beach toweling, I've never heard that. I like that.
Yeah, so that's something that no peer sensor or under the desk sensor or anything can tell you anything about, right?
Yeah.
But we can actually say, well, it's not occupied, but it's not vacant, so it's in use. And further on, something like other object detection or behavioral detection. How is the room being used? Is it being used for phone calls? Is it being used for computer work or deep thinking or something like this? Is additional layers we can add on with something like our sensor. So it's a really interesting route we have going forward in this regard.
Yeah, nice. And are you guys already working in, there's this concept of serendipity, right? Where people randomly run into each other, and then from that random connection, something happens. Are you guys already getting involved in that? Because I know it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening on a really incredible scale in the research space, but also in some of the technology development where if you think about it, you could actually start to see how information and connections and data are starting to be created within buildings based on how people move around. Are you guys involved in that already?
We are on a sort of early stage involved in that. We're working together with some Nordic architectural companies who want to exactly understand behavioral patterns within well-functioning offices, for instance, compared to behavioral patterns in less functioning offices, less productive offices, you might say, and then see if they can generate some kind of understanding from the architectural or the design phase around that they can implement in their future design as best practices for a productive office. So this is something I see definitely will continue very, very stronger going forward. I think that when we talk about these different cases that we can do with our occupancy sensors, we kind of look at three things. So we look at the basic energy optimization, which is where we started. Then the next step that we're looking at and sort of perfecting now is the space optimization, making sure that there is sufficient space and for everybody, but not too much. And finally, and I think that this is the golden or the holy grail of the building occupancy, and this is the productivity of the people in the building. And it's really difficult to measure. I don't think that anybody actually managed to make a good system work around this. But this is, of course, the golden goose in the end. This is really what we would like to be part of. And I think that especially when we're talking about the post-pandemic workplace and the hybrid way of working and so on, pairing that with the utilization rates that we see in our system, you can fear that some of these interactions and spur of the moment sort of brainstorming and, hey, I got an idea, let's have a talk about that disappears, or that at least it's more difficult to implement in a working day. Yeah. So we are hoping that by making sure that the space is optimized for the people working there, that nobody will be sitting alone on the third floor and somebody else alone on the second floor. So manage to create that, enable that collaborative environment. We also know that we haven't gotten the perfect way of doing that yet, but this is something that's going to be really interesting in the coming years to see.
Definitely.
How do we nail that, and who nails that?
Well, so I mean, that's where the smart building certification started from, right? Was doing research in office spaces on what the impact of light were on people, and plants on people, and food on people, and then measuring it with occupancy sensors and light sensors and these types of things. And nobody's cracked it yet, because it's actually a collective consciousness that's required in order to get to that level, right? We first needed to know, what was the impact of all of these things on us, and then we needed to understand the impact of culture and leadership. That was a completely different thing. And then the research actually is this convergence point where all those things come together with the technology. They're able to help us measure these things. Then you can come to those answers. So it's a really fascinating time, because I think in the next few years, with the emergence of AI and the emergence of all of these converging concepts and technologies, we are going to crack it, and it's going to be really fascinating when we do.
I trust we will as well. I mean, what I'm really interested in is measuring the productivity, basically. Like, how do you measure the productivity output? Is it basically just the top line, or what is it that we take into consideration? And of course, we can play our part. We are fundamentally an AI and data supplier. That's what we do best. And that's why we love to work together with guys like you and guys like the Empire AI in Norway and so on, that can actually take that data, talk to the customer, conduct some qualitative also research around that in order to find that equilibrium where productivity and that innovation happens.
Push that needle forward. It's fascinating. Yeah. Absolutely. So you had a nice bridge about your first one, where you started was on energy optimization. That's really interesting, because I don't think 3 years ago people would think that the occupancy management, like its driving force, was energy. But it's a perfect bridge over to building performance, right? If we look at our module on building performance, we're talking about energy, we're talking about BMS systems, we're talking about HVAC systems, we're talking about, optimizing all of the things that make a building perform well. So how does Ubiqisense help that process?
Yeah. So we realized from once we started digging into this and going into the space optimization, we also started to understand the sort of the ecosystem that we're in. So we have we developed our product vision based on that, basically, which first of all we wanted to make a system that's easy to use for all partners involved. So that means that an office manager or a facility manager can set up the system. Second of all, we wanted to make sure that we had the best occupancy insight available. And the last bit is that we wanted to ensure that our system is open and integratable to all players within the ecosystem. And this is kind of the fundament upon which we build our system. So we need to be able to send, and the end user needs to be able to send whatever data they receive from us to whichever third-party BMS, whatever other system that they use, where they feel that this data can be of value. So this is the foundation we built Ubiqisense upon, and we have already multiple integrations, and we're continuously developing integrations because this is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go and look at 27 different systems in order to understand how their building works. They want to go to one place and get the entire information from there. So whether that's MQTT, whether that's webhooks, Bluetooth, whatever that may be, open APIs, we have it, and it's available for integration. We are still looking at that one system to rule them all, right? Yeah. So what is the future of digital twins and building management? What will it look like? Where should we kind of place our bets in this regard? And I think it's a very open-ended question at the moment, because there's definitely a lot of interesting things happening now.
Well, and you know, what we have in our certification is a module called integrative design, right? Where what we want to see is how can we, with the least amount of technology, impact all of the value cases that a building could be thinking about. And we've seen buildings do it with 30 technologies, and we've seen buildings do it with 5 technologies. And they'll do the same amount of output or results-based, you know, aspects to the building. They just do it completely different. And we don't actually say one is right and the other one is wrong. It's too early for that. Yeah. But I think over the course of, you know, the next 5 to 10 years, a language will emerge that, you know, is far superior to everything else. And I think that's what we're all kind of working with and trying to understand. So it's really interesting. But what are the value cases from a building performance that buildings can think about with occupancy technology?
In regards to, well, I mean, there's energy optimization, obviously, right? So it's not just a matter of, you know, there's a present, turn on the ventilation, right? But we can say, okay, well, there's actually 6 people in this room, so the ventilation levels need to be here. So it's, first of all, it's optimization of the energy used, but also it makes the environment around the people in those rooms more pleasant, and hopefully will impact them positively. Second of all, it's the occupancy level. It's, I mean, when we look, we see buildings, and this is post-pandemic. Even before the pandemic, it was so I will say, with the utilizations level, at least when you come from a hotel perspective, you know, you see utilization levels of maybe 40-50%. But now, multiple times we see 10, 15, maximum 20%. It's very, very low. And I mean, considering that if you just have one home day a week for each employee, that's 20% of the space you potentially could save if you just manage it properly.
And is that the same across all your markets, or is it, do you see differences in the different markets?
It's the same across all markets. It's the same. Yeah. So universities, I mean, they fare better.
Yeah, of course.
But generally speaking, regardless of whether it's a bank, insurance company, whether it's Fortune 500, whatever, it's pretty much the same.
Well, universities have a mandated pull, right? Like you have to go to class, whereas companies are trying to understand the future, you know. And so how do you guys capture, or how do you play into forecasting? You know, so I mean, you guys are a real-time occupancy sensor for right now, but you know, how do I know when I should turn my energy on and when I should turn it off? Do you have forecasting possibilities?
We don't do forecasting as of yet, so we do direct integrations with real-time data. So that means, for instance, that when you enter a room, and as the occupancy grows within the room, the heating and the ventilation will be adjusted accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens in real time. Second of all, we have integrations with a variety of booking systems and calendar systems and such, that, for instance, if you leave a room early, a meeting room early, or you don't show up, then after X amount of minutes, then the meeting room is automatically released into
Yeah.
booking again, and so on. So it very much, we call it the frictionless office, in the sense that it will sort of adjust itself throughout the day.
Yeah.
Predictions is something that we're really keen on starting to look into. We have a lot of data that we very much want to use, and we're starting now working together with some guys also who knows a little bit more about the qualitative aspect of this than we do. As I said, we're really good at collecting and showing data. That's what we do. We're technologists, but we're not per se space consultants.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so happy to be part of this place also, that we can leverage on each other's.
Well, yeah. So we had a meeting. We did a similar session last week with a partner of ours called Bizner, which is an office app that is for room bookings and all that stuff. And it's really about working together, because using that technology for your forecasting and using your technology for your live data, I mean, you get this power systems in play that you can actually manage this stuff way better than, well, definitely way better than not having any technology at all.
Yes, no, it's a must. Going forward, it's a must to have some sort of understanding of your occupancy.
Yeah.
I mean, and when we came out 4 years ago to the market, there was a sort of I mean, like big data, everybody wants it, but nobody really knows what to use it for. We had the same experience, like with our occupancy data. It was like, yeah, that would be nice to have, but nobody really saw the perspective.
What am I using it for? Yeah.
Exactly. Now I think everybody sees the perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's move to the next module. If we talk about indoor environment, so health and well-being, I mean, it plays into the same as energy consumption, but how are you guys supporting a healthy environment?
Right. So I can give you a very concrete example that with one of our larger university clients. So they had, during the pandemic, they kept education going, even had classes open, but they wanted to ensure that there was only maximum 50% of the occupancy allowed in that place, and also they wanted to make sure that people weren't sitting too tightly together. So we actually quickly iterated around, we call it the social distancing solution, basically. So again, with our sensors, we were able to very precisely place people within a room. So apart from the people and the amount, we also get coordinates around where people are. And then we can enable, for instance, alerts that will pop up, like say, oh, there are more people in this room than actually it's safe to be, or in this room people are sitting too tightly together, and then based on that knowledge, the managers there could take action.
Yeah.
So that's a very sort of clear example around how we can enable that. Hopefully we're not going to do much more of that, but you never know.
Yeah.
Anyways, that just kind of shows the power of this kind of technology, that you can really monitor live as things are happening. And we did an integration also around this time with AWS to enable our solution on IP cameras, for instance, that you have in public spaces.
Yeah.
Right? So you have a completely non-intrusive, non-personal identifiable way of just making sure that that it's a safe environment. So that's, I think, is a very clear
And
example.
that's making a bridge to our safety module, which I think is a good one. But I also just want to make the point for our viewers. The power is also an integration, right? Because if you are integrated to your HVACs and your BMS, and you're integrated towards CO2 sensors and air quality sensors, then you can make these correlations of this many people are causing this much air quality, and therefore we need more ventilation. And in
Yeah,
the smart building certification, we have a, I guess you'd call it a module on maturity of smart, right? It's one thing to have occupancy data. Like, yes, you can get really strong insights from it. You can make improvements. You can make decisions. It's very, very useful. It's another thing to have integrations with all these other things that drive the actual performance of the building. And that's where we want to move to, is this very, very mature level of smart, where you have a lot of automation happening within the building.
I agree. And we are looking also to integrate other sort of data into our system. And again, it's because we look at the at various systems out there and see where to place our money. But I think that so far from what we hear, the way that we present data, the level of granularity within our data, the insights that you get, it starts to make sense to pull in this kind of data into our platform as well. We've been working together with a company, NCC, in Denmark, where one of our partners there, Lars, he sort of made his own system, because he's really deep into this whole energy and CO2 and sensor, but there is no system for him. So he actually had to create his own sort of Power BI that integrates all these various points and all these various sensors into one system. And so far it's the best one I've seen, actually. And it's really funny to see, the how you can see the occupancy goes up, then the CO2 levels go up, and how it correlates, right? And also, yeah, I suppose that if all of a sudden the CO2 level goes up and there are no people present, then you've got a problem, right?
Well, and we've seen that by a number of our buildings where they've looked on the market, and maybe it's because they just couldn't find it, or they didn't have like a smart building collective where they could dive in and see multiple solutions, but they can't find it. So they go and they build it themselves.
Yeah,
And I think your point is it's about flexibility, right? It's about use my platform, don't use my platform. That doesn't matter.
yeah.
The data and the value cases and how you tie those things together, that's what matters. And we need to be flexible in the approach, right? The goal is clear,
Exactly.
but the approach needs to be flexible. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that was our starting point. Was just like, here, take our data and use it, right?
Yeah.
And then we realized that, well, that didn't happen, right? So we'll need to use it ourselves then and show you how to do things. And that's kind of how it started with our platform. It was born out of necessity.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's of course worrisome that everybody builds their own, because what we really want is the one system to rule but hopefully that's going to come along, and it's going to be in a language that can communicate across platforms.
Yeah, I mean, we're just happy people are doing it.
Yeah,
And,
that's true.
and then, I think competition at this stage is also really healthy, because we're all pushing each other and learning from each other. And, as we kind of reinvent the wheel every time, we're learning new things and new connections, and we're sharing those. And that's coming into the global consciousness. But that consolidation will definitely happen, where these solutions will start to come closer together, and the ones who didn't get the traction will kind of shut off, and the ones that did get the traction will probably be integrated into other things. So
Yeah,
it's a very exciting time from a technology point of view.
it is.
Yeah, so safety and security, you kind of started talking about it, but what are the value cases, and what are you guys doing from first of all, a physical security? Like, do you guys help with the security of an asset? And second of all, what are you guys doing as a company for cybersecurity, right? Because the more we digitize, the more data we have, there is vulnerability there, right? Because people like to break systems and they like to systems. And what are you guys seeing? And yeah, what are you doing about that?
So whenever we talk to new potential clients or partners, I mean, we get two questions first before we can continue that conversation, and that's GDPR and cybersecurity.
Yeah.
That's and we before we can go on, we need to answer those questions. So we put obviously, I mean that's just if we can't answer those adequately, then we're not gonna go anywhere. So we put a lot of effort into this. Yeah. So
But so
no, I mean,
GDPR and
and security
cybersecurity.
around it. Yeah. So we've done a lot around security, both with Amazon Web Services, together with them, and together with Danish Technological Institute, and together with F-Secure, actually monitoring both software and hardware and how is it to break in, and we're in a good place now, also in the way that we can document it. Of course, no system is unbreakable if you really want to get in there, but at least it's very isolated case, and there's no way that you can get any sort of valuable information out of it. So we're quite in a good place there, I would say.
Well, and I think we're, as an industry, getting smarter about it too, right? When it comes to cybersecurity, what we always say is that there's two types of data, right? Not all data is created equal. You have sensitive data and you have less sensitive data. And occupancy data, by nature is not very sensitive,
Yeah.
unless it's connected to an individual and is tracking them to the bathroom or whatever.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's less sensitive. So it's very important that those networks and the way that you treat that data is in line with its sensitivity, is what we say.
Yes, very much so. You hear these stories about how they jump from an aquarium pump into the casino system and so on. So,
Exactly.
but again, it's. I think that it kind of comes with the industry. When you deal with IoT, this is just a question that you need to be able to answer.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. And then the last module that we always talk about is user behavior and collaboration. What this means is it's the ability for people to find each other, work with each other, connect with each other, but also interact with the building. And what are the value cases that you're seeing from a user perspective, from an individual? Because it's also really interesting, right? There was a university here in the Netherlands where it had some cameras and occupancy sensors on the wall, and the students started ripping them off the wall and it started covering them because they said, you will not track me,
Yeah.
and it's just, it's not about tracking people, it's about adding value. But I think that is important, right? We need to add value to the user. We need to show them how this adds value to their day to day. What are you guys seeing and how are you guys tackling that?
We fortunately don't see very much of this. In fact, I think only once when we did a proof of concept in a public space, actually, we had the sensor taken down. So we usually advise our clients to really inform the tenants of what is this thing that's hanging on the wall, and what does it do, because well, I'm skeptical and suspicious by nature. So if I didn't know and I came into a place, I would also think twice. What is this? What are they trying to achieve here?
Yeah.
In regards to the value that you can offer, I mean, I think a lot of it is still uncertain, in the sense that there's a lot of good ideas that hasn't really proven their worth yet. Like fundamentally, the get people together in a shared workforce to collaborate and innovate and share ideas. That's kind of the thinking. But again, do we have any solid data that it actually works like this? Not really. Right. So again, it comes back for us to what we call the frictionless office. So it's about showing simply, where is this desk? Where is this meeting room? Where is there an available meeting room? And so on. So just instead of having to walk back and front and forward to various rooms just to find out that they're occupied, than just making informed decisions around that.
So making it useful for people.
Yeah, so that's a very sort of basic level starting point that we take. Again, for us that sits in the third leg of the value that we can provide, the productivity thing, making sure that or enabling people to be more productive in the workplace. So it's not our core focus at this moment. We're very much interested in talking to people who do this and who feel that they may be able to use our occupancy data to make their solution better. But it's not something that we're directly looking to develop ourselves at this moment.
Okay. And what about, so would that be then the tracking of individuals where you can see where somebody is?
That could be the tracking of individuals. I mean, I can tell you, we actually just integrated with a map solution, an indoor mapping solution called Maze Maps that sits in Norway. And it's still very early. We just have it in a few customers. It's something we're going to roll out in the next month or so. But this will enable you, for instance, to make routes based on where you are. Then we have internally in our sensor, we actually have a low powered Bluetooth chip as well. So going forward, this is something that we can also see that we can utilize in the wayfinding, in the indoor mapping, or potentially even like some push notifications around, your meeting is up in 2 minutes or whatever that might be, right? Because you can do a lot around the Bluetooth integration and this close sort of notification, push notification things. So it's something that we're looking into. At the moment, we're really focusing on the insights, on the occupancy insights, because we see that this is where we can get most bang for the buck. We can provide a lot of value there. We've only just scratched the surface, and yet I think we're on a good path. So this will be our main focus. But again, the holy grail, the productivity, that's certainly
no. And then those integrations of how people move and who they meet and what they do. I mean, that all is going to come into play. But I think you guys are right in your assessment that right now companies need to understand their occupancy so that they can design the experience better, so that they can get the usage up and make sure that people are getting value from their space. And then that other stuff is a logical next step, but not needed yet.
Yes, and perhaps there are people who can do that better than us as well, where with our data that they can make, maybe they already have something there that we can build upon. So again, we're completely open to partnerships and integrations, because this is just, as you said, this is the future of how it's going to be. It has to be, right? Exactly. So we really want to just make sure that we keep having the best occupancy insights, whether that means including big data that we're looking at now, or other types of sensors or other systems perhaps into our platform, where we traditionally thought it the other way around. Now we're thinking we're getting to a point where we can actually start looking into making our solution sort of the go-to when it comes to these kind of information.
Really nice. Before we close, what I would love to hear as well is how difficult is it and how expensive is it to get started and to use Ubiqisense sensors, and how do I go about it, and what is the kind of the journey, the service model that you would like to tell us about?
Right. So at first, I think that it's important that you consider what exactly you'd like to use this data for.
Like that answer.
Yeah.
Start with the end in mind.
Yeah. So it's not going to be a sort of a one solution fits all thing where you can just plug it in and then magically within half a year your building will be optimized, right? So think about maybe starting, for instance, someplace like meeting rooms, because it's a really easy, low-hanging fruit place to start. Get to know the system, understand meeting rooms, take some actions there, experiment a bit about what it can be. Contact us. contact some of our partners for deeper insights around that, and then take it from there. Is it because you feel that your space is not used optimal? Is it because you're starting working remotely, hybrid work? Is it because you're thinking about you're expanding, moving to a larger office, and so on? So that there are various use cases where you can actually bring it in. As for then taking it the next step, you reach out to Christian or Eva from our team, and you have a chat with them. They're very friendly, and then basically to begin with, what we'll do is that we'll just listen to the specific case you have in mind, ask to send a few plan drawings over with the areas. We will also give some recommendation. Then basically we will map out how many sensors do you need, where should they sit, and so on. And once that's mapped out, you have two choices. Either you can do everything yourself. It's possible. Even your office manager or a facility management team, they can do it. It's very easy. It's you can go through the entire commissioning, provisioning process on our platform. So don't need anything really for that. Only thing you need to be sure is that you have power. So that might be the only additional cost that you need. Or we also have partners around Europe or the US that can actually do the whole setup and thing for you. So you have a variety of opportunities in this regard, and what we hear is that and this is probably particular for partners and resellers and distributors and so on, that they can really keep it cost efficient because they can do everything themselves. So they don't need to have some kind of senior integration specialist consultancy hours on top of that just to sort of make sense of the data. So that's the first thing, and then start with a meeting room. Start with one floor. Start with something that you know. Get an understanding of the system, and then we'll take it from there.
Taking that insight from that sensor and turning it into value, and that's what the Smart Building Certification and Collective is trying to dissect and understand: is what are all the value cases that can be done, and how do you actually pull money and value and return off of these investments. And really inspiring stuff. It's been a joy to watch you guys innovate and to watch your journey. We're excited to continue as partners with you guys. And I'll leave it to you for a closing remark, but I want to thank you very much for this time together. I think it was really useful, and anybody who's watching is going to get a lot out of it.
Well, thanks for having me, Nicholas. It's been a real pleasure as well. Always happy to talk about what we do, and we have so much that we still want to do that it's difficult to know where to start. But the possibilities are endless, and as you say, it's really an interesting time we're going into for the smart buildings. And I hope that we can also continue on this journey together and make best use of each other and who's on the platform, because all hands on deck.
Absolutely. And congratulations with your solution certification. And watch this space and watch Ubiqisense, because they're doing some great things. So you can get in touch with them directly. They're very nice people, as you've heard. So we wish you guys well, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicholas.